Welcome everybody to Studio B. I am your host, Pastor MDH. Thank you so very much for joining us. And as is our custom, wherever you are watching us from, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, IG, make sure that you like, follow, subscribe, and comment. No matter where you access your podcast from, Spotify, Pandora, Google, wherever that may be, you can access Studio B from those same platforms. So make sure that you are following this and that you are giving this out so that we can increase the viewership and followership of the podcast. So thank you everybody that joins in every single week. Your viewership is not taken for granted, and we thank you so very much. Today in the studio, I have a very, very special guest. I know I say that when I have guests in here all the time, but there are guests that are very, very, very special. And this young man I've been knowing for... let's put it out there, Dave, maybe, is it 10 years?
That's close enough, yeah.
About 10 years, okay. A great friend of the ministry, great friend. I took a very, very eye-opening trip that we're going to talk a lot about here during the podcast to India, but I want to introduce Mr. David Moorhead, who is the CEO of Child Freedom Coalition, a good friend of the ministry. How you doing today, Dave?
Man, I am excited to be here. So I'm so proud of what you guys are doing here and using technology in the 21st century to really make an impact. So it's great to be back at Bethel's Place. So. And
we are, the Bible says that your spirit will testify to my spirit that we are both children of God. We have a kindred spirit, man, and we, I don't say this very lightly, but we connect. And having people that you connect with, I think, is very, very important in life. I've been wanting to do this and in this kind of form for quite a bit because this is something that is near and dear to my heart, and that is global missions, and we'll connect the two. But global missions for me, as everybody know, over 110 mission trips, 31 countries around the world. This is really where I discovered, and I don't mean this in a very haphazardly way, but really where I discovered God's grace. Being able to see and witness cultures and people from different walks of life has really enhanced my spiritual worldview. I mean, greatly enhanced it. And it gives me a perspective that unfortunately a lot of people cannot enjoy because all they seen is what they see every day. This is their normal, right? The Western church, the Western idea, the Western concept. But when you go around the world and experience different people in all different walks of life, it really gives you this 30,000-foot perspective that otherwise you cannot enjoy. So, man, I'm excited about today because I want to get into this, man, because I think people need to know about it. We live in bubbles. And so as long as it's not affecting my zip code, my house, my family, then...
Hey, I was there. I'm a PK. I'm a preacher's kid. And I grew up, and even when I was married, going to church and hearing incredible testimonies about what God was doing in other places. And some of them really scary. And I always thought, what an incredible story. But I sure am glad that it's that guy and not me.
Yeah.
And here I am now.
And here you are now. Here you are now. So, David, tell us a little bit about yourself and about Child Freedom Coalition.
So, in my previous life, I was in mortgage banking for 20 years. I had a wife, 2 kids, very comfortable. And my wife and I were a part of a church, and we really sensed God working in our hearts that something was going to change. And it was almost a restless spirit, of a prodding that, you're not happy, you're not satisfied. And it was a scary feeling. And, God led us through this path, and we finally got to the point where we just gave up and said, all right, God, we're believing in the promises of what you say in your word, so we're going to cash our chips in. We're moving all in and seeing what you have in store. And it changed that quickly. And it became very apparent that God did not want me in the mortgage world, in mortgage banking. And over a period of months, we were traveling on cloud 9 spiritually, and just had a peace that we don't know what's in store, but we know God's in control. And, that transcending peace was just incredible. And I remember about 3 or 4 months later talking to my boss and quitting my job, not knowing what was next for me, but just taking that step of faith. And I think like my dad, I always had a heart for missions. We would always talk about things that were going on. And even before my wife and I took that leap of faith, I became friends with this pastor in India through social media. And he was doing really incredible work.
Is that how you connected with him?
We did on Facebook.
Wow, really?
So I started messengering him and asking him questions. And basically at that time what he was doing was going into these rock quarries in India where they were enslaving these kids. And these kids were forced to work from sunup to sundown. They lived in the quarry. They got maybe one meal a day. And they were abused. It's just a pit of hell, literally. And he would go and take food and donated clothing to these kids and just minister to them. And his goal was to try to raise money to ransom these kids and pay off their debt so that they could escape. And we just thought, and talking to my dad about it, there's got to be a way to get the laws enforced. And right around that time, our partner was nominated, and I'm keeping his name out of this for obvious reasons, but he was nominated by the Indian government for Social Worker of the Year. And he's not a social worker, he's a pastor. And he ended up winning that award, and it gave him a platform to be on TV and to stand in front of a large audience, and many politicians were there, and he said, "This is what's happening to our children. And if somebody like CNN comes in here and exposes this, it's really going to make India look bad." And so some of those politicians, listened to his words, and they started enforcing the laws, and the floodgates opened. And he started rescuing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids that were being released from quarries.
Now, he was literally redeeming kids to ransom them out of these rock quarries. And this is, David, first of all, I didn't know that that's how the connection came about. This pastor is and we've spoken about him, me and you, many a times before. This guy is the real deal.
Yeah.
And we talked about the isolation of the Western church and the Western culture and kind of staying in our zip code and within our framework of our own house. And as long as it's not affecting me directly, then, I feel bad about that over there.
Yeah.
But that's them. This is me.
Yeah.
But this pastor is really doing not just a great job, not just a phenomenal job, but he is really doing the work of the Lord.
Yeah.
And going into these particular places and risking life and limb, literally, to rescue these kids out of these enslavement camps. So, I mean, how do you compartmentalize that to somebody that's watching that is a typical American, middle class, mom, dad, kid, dog? How do you compartmentalize that? How do you get them to see that in the space that we're living in here in America?
Yeah. And I was the same way. And, in order to really quantify something, you've got to do research on it and figure out what the problem is. And what I discovered was that there are more people enslaved right now than any time in human history.
Yeah.
And so when you start looking at India, the numbers were staggering. And, what I discovered was that in human trafficking, in slavery and forced marriage, bonded servitude, all of the different ways that you can define modern slavery. In America, they estimated there were maybe 600,000 people in trafficking. If you look at a country like China, which is as large as India population-wise, they're neck and neck. And China is obviously a closed country, and they estimated that there were, about 4 million people enslaved in China. And then you looked at India, and the number was 8 million. And that's twice the slave population of China. And you start unpacking what all of that means. Why is it so high in India? Why does the UN rank India number one for girls being the most dangerous place on the planet. And so what we discovered by all of these children that were getting rescued from all of these horrific circumstances was the common thread was that they were all untouchables. Mm-hmm. They were outcasts.
Now walk through that, because that's we got to kind of get to the meat and potatoes about that, because in order to unpackage it so that the average everyday American, to bring them closer to this knowledge, we got to unpack that. So we're talking about the caste system in India.
Yes.
And these untouchables rank all the way at the bottom. Bottom.
Yeah, they are outside of the caste system. So
which says a lot.
Outcast. And so in India you have what they call the SC, the scheduled caste. And by the way, the caste system has been deemed illegal decades ago.
Yeah, decades ago.
But it's so prevalent because it's a part of their culture, and most importantly, it's a part of their religion. And the predominant religion in India is Hinduism. And in simple terms, Hinduism is a pathway, and that pathway involves several reincarnations. Mm-hmm. And where you are in this lifetime is a result of how you lived your previous life. Yeah.
So if you come in as a roach, then the life that you lived before that was not very pleasing.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So if you're an outcast, then you're shunned by society because you were such a bad person in your previous life, then the sooner you die, the better. And if I try to help you, then that might bring bad karma in my life, and that may affect where I travel in my next lifetime. So Dave, let me ask you. So I think it was 2014 that we traveled. Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
2014, we took a small team to India, and let me tell you, in all the places that I've been around the world, India was one of the most eye-opening experiences that the Lord has allowed me to have. The population, the denseness of the population, people just on top of each other, people everywhere. And then all of these little different sects and these little, it reminds me when I went to Czech Republic on a mission trip. As you're walking through Czech Republic, you see all of these religious statues everywhere. Mm-hmm. Like it's inundated in the city of Czech Republic. I mean, there's literally a religious symbol or religious statue every 5 feet. Mm-hmm. But Czech Republic is a pagan to the 19th power city. So you see all of these religious figurines and stuff all around, and you would think that they have a religious pulse of what's going on with God, but they have all but abandoned the things of God. So when I was going through India and I see all these little elephants and I see all these little Hindu things everywhere like that, it just reminds me of the fact that when we are fighting this war, and again, it's hard to quantify this to the typical American who has only seen American stuff, watched American TV, immersed in American culture. It's kind of difficult to kind of get them to see it because in order to see it, you got to really see it. But this thing is so prevalent in India to where it's really like it's an uphill battle, isn't it?
It is. You could literally pour billions of dollars into that country and it wouldn't do any good. India is a very powerful emerging market country, tremendous wealth, but because of this system that they've set up with Hinduism and the caste system, that it is something that's inescapable if you're an untouchable. You're in an endless cycle of poverty because you're shunned basically by the rest of society.
Now, Dave, now walk that point, because now here in America, you could be born into a poor family. You could have parents that were not educated. You could have grandparents that were on welfare. But if you're born in America, you're born with certain opportunities. So no matter where you were born at, you have an opportunity to get out of that place. Whereas in India, if you're born into this caste system or into this untouchable class, there is no way that you can get out of that caste system.
For the most part, it is inescapable, but we have done our best. We've found ways to try to overcome those hurdles. So the hurdles that you're looking at are basically socially cue-driven. And it would be your countenance, how you carry yourself, how you're dressed, how you look, what your name is, what family you come from, what village you come from. And if we're able to overcome those hurdles, and most importantly, providing an education for most of these kids, the first time in their life they've ever received an education, and then vocational training, give them an opportunity to earn a living and put a fresh set of clothes on them. So let me give you an example. If you drive down to the Fourth Ward and you see a young girl standing on the street corner that's dressed a certain way, you're going to jump to certain conclusions very quickly. But if you took that girl and you nurtured her and you taught her that she mattered and that there was a God who loved her, and you nurtured her, you educated her, and you equipped her, you gave her a new set of clothes, and then you drove by again and you saw that same girl standing there, you would have a totally different outcome. So that's our goal. One of the neatest things about Child Freedom Coalition is not something that we created, but it was created by these kids that were rescued. Back in 2013, we had a lot of the older kids that were rescued. I'm talking about 17, 18, 19 years old. And these kids had never received an education. And they didn't want to start from scratch. They didn't want to learn their ABCs. They just said, hey, teach me how to do something so I can go make something for myself. And so we bought some sewing machines, the old-fashioned foot pedal grandma sewing machines, and they looked at those and said, that's my ticket. And so these girls were literally fighting over who gets to sew next, 24 hours a day.
A sewing machine. A
sewing machine. 3 a.m. in the morning, a girl is taking her turn and practicing. And so our partner saw an ad in a newspaper for a shirt factory. And he talked to the manager and said, this is who I am. You can check around town and you'll find out I'm a good guy. And I have these girls, and these girls know how to sew. And so he told her where they came from, and she was really compelled by that. And so she traveled by bus like 6 hours and came to the girls where they were living and met them, heard their stories. And then she said, I'm going to test every one of you girls. Here's a shirt pattern, and I want you to sew it from start to finish in 45 minutes. Every girl that took that test passed. And so she went back and contacted our partner and said, I'm going to hire 50 of your girls. And the starting pay is going to be $300 a month. Which is an astronomical amount of money. So in India, that's almost 10 times what an untouchable is going to earn in a day. And so these girls grabbed onto that opportunity, and 6 months later, every one of those girls were promoted to new positions, earning a higher income. But the remarkable part, Marcus, was that we started seeing money coming from those girls. And it was out of gratitude, and it was out of devotion.
Sewing back into it.
Yeah. And some of them, it was out of motivation, saying, go rescue my brother, go rescue my sister. They're still out there. And I'm not talking about tithing. It's humbling to see the devotion and the gratitude. And now you fast forward, 7 years later, 8 years later, and we've now graduated 800 of those kids that are now a part of society in India. And they continue to give back. And they're giving back between $30,000 and $40,000 a month. So that gets poured right back into the kids that we're caring for. And cumulatively, they've given back over $1.1 million US dollars.
And that's Dave, let me ask you. Take us back to, so the untouchables that are sold into these enslavement camps. Describe the conditions, because the pastor in India described the conditions, which are beyond words, but describe the conditions because it's typically sexual abuse and a lot of different abuses that are going on. So describe what are these kids facing on a daily basis?
Yeah. So how did they get there?
Yeah.
Now, all these years later, we've seen the rescue of tens of thousands of children, and the majority of them get reunited with their parents. So if you look at where an untouchable lives, they're outside of society. They're miles below the poverty line, and they're trying to eke out an existence. And the typical untouchable family might have 5, 7, 8, 10 children. And if you think of the family unit, it would be comparable to a family unit here, let's say 100 years ago. And if I lived out in the country, I would have a passel of kids so they could help support the family. So if one of those kids gets sick, then I need money to buy medicine. And I need to go down to the payday advance store and see the loan shark and get a little loan so I can buy money. And when I can't pay off that debt, then the loan shark shows up and says, well, I'm going to take one of your kids and they're going to work off your debt. But that debt never gets paid off. The interest is too high. These people are largely ignorant, and sometimes they're manipulated. You'll have someone that will come in and they're well-dressed into their village and say, look at me, I'm high caste. I come from the big city, and we have a special school that we've built for poor children, and I've got 7 spots left. Here, take my kids, and the neighbor take my kids, and those kids are sold to brothels, or they're sold to a rock quarry owner or a brick factory. And that's, how these kids are abused, because they're not human. They're subhuman, is the way that they're taught. And that's the way society looks at them. So the majority of the kids that we have been rescued from rock quarries. But we have kids that have been rescued from brick factories, from sex trafficking, 4th Street begging, abandonment, on and on.
Now, these rock quarries are slate?
They're slate rock quarries for the most part in the part of India that we're working in. And these kids are basically manual laborers. They're moving rubble from one place to another, like a fireman's carry, just passing it all day long. And they cull out the slate, they haul it up by a crane, and it's loaded onto trucks and taken to distribution centers. So unfortunately for these kids, this is also a brothel. So the quarry owner and his friends and the workers and the truck drivers will come in and abuse these kids. So that's their existence. So,
there's an interesting dynamic that I've always thought about when we're looking at, in America, the niceties that we kind of enjoy. Those who wear Nikes and Jordans, when you begin to start looking at how those particular things were produced, the child labor that was used to make those particular shoes, clothes, whatever it may be, and nonetheless with the same amenities that we enjoy, the beautiful marble, the slates that line our bathrooms and in our showers. That thing has a trail. It has a history. And most of the time that history is sorted, because we're living in a commerce world. Whoever can give me the best price, regardless of where the origination came from, that's what I'm going to do. But as we begin to start looking at those things, Dave, those things have a history, and sometimes that history is very, very dark about how they got to us. Now, we're none much no wiser. We go to Home Depot, we go to an outlet center, whatever the case may be. But these things have a real history behind them. And now these kids, to which I've seen, and these kids, I preached a sermon a couple years ago that said the joyness of my heart. And I said, anytime that you're feeling down in life, find a child. Like anytime you're starting to feel sorry for yourself and things are not going right, find a child and look at the smile on their faces. And when I went to India and saw these kids that were rescued out of these rock quarries and out of these particular places, but the smiles, considering what they came through.
It's an indescribable joy. And what's really incredible about these pastors that rescue these kids is that their number one priority is sharing the gospel. And so when these kids are rescued, they're scared half to death. They're thrown into a church, and they just think they're going to get sold again. And then they start to realize, I'm not getting abused. They're actually letting me rest. They're feeding me. And then they start to ask, why are you doing this for someone like me? And that's how tangible the gospel is. And so they discover a God that loves them, and they discover this indescribable joy. Because what these kids have endured would put us through therapy for the rest of our lives. And in our weak first world problems that we have to deal with, what they dealt with, the stories that you heard when you were there are just, that's the worst thing I've ever heard happen to a human being in my life. And then the next kid comes up and tells a story that's even worse. And to now see where they are now and the joy that they have. And these pastors use this opportunity because the majority of the kids that have been rescued, we've reunited with their parents. And so guess what happens when these kids are reunited with their parents? The parents say, why are you doing this for someone like us? And that, again, it provides that same type of transaction. The pastors get to tell them they matter. They matter to God.
So, and I just give me a minute, because I haven't even got to any of this, man, because God is doing this a different way. Let me. So you talk about first world problems. One of the things that I love is the gospel presentation is going forth in power, but it is tangible, as you say. And I have been on record, because what you're doing with these kids is you're getting them to identify with the Creator, that He made them in His own image and according to His own likeness. So in order to fix all of these problems that are facing the world right now, it has to be, we have to fix how we view people, because how we view people is ultimately how we will treat them. As you said, these untouchables are considered to be, or viewed as subhuman, not even human-like. And I mean, there's so many different correlations that I was thinking about on my way here, with slavery and the slave owners, how they viewed their slaves as being subhuman. These people are not even really people, so you can just kind of treat them any old kind of way. So how you view a person will ultimately determine how you treat that person. And the thing about the gospel in this context, which is why missions for me has just absolutely illuminated my world, we are living in America right now that talks a whole lot about first world problems. Like, we complain and we get on Twitter and we're complaining on $1,000 smartphone. Like, this is our life. This is what's wrong with my life. Let me tell you what's wrong with my life on my $1,000 smartphone, right? So we have first world problems in a large degree. And because we haven't been exposed to anything outside of our common day, it puts us in this place where those first world problems that may seem significant to you, in the grand scheme of life, Dave, and I'm talking about these kids were like 5, 6, 7 years old. I'm talking about the kids that I saw. Now, we had older kids that were in there too, but I'm talking about these 5, 6, and when we air this podcast, there's going to be pictures that I'm going to put up. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Of the kids. I'm talking about the smiles on their faces when they have been rescued, show the love of God, show compassion, and their lives have absolutely been transformed, because you got them to see that they were made in the image of God and that they were important. When you see what you guys are doing in regards to the gospel presentation, when you look at the Western Christianity and the global church, you see some stark differences, don't you?
Yeah.
So how do you get this church member who is a born-again Christian here in America, but goes to a nice, comfortable church with air conditioning blowing on the back of their neck, sitting in very padded pews, multi-$1,000 sound system, light system, smoke shows, and the rest? How do you get that person who is a genuine born-again believer, how do you get them to believe and even care about things that are happening outside of their world?
Wow. Where can I go with that? I want to speak to our first world problems. And, I heard something recently that describes the situation that we're in when we complain about not having Wi-Fi reception on our $1,000 phone, or that we have to wear a mask when we go into our air-conditioned church to be entertained and enlightened for 1 hour and not 1 minute more.
Yeah, that's right.
So I can be first in line at the restaurant.
Yeah.
What I heard it described is that we're in a soul famine, and we have everything at our disposal except for the things that we actually need. And there's a deep hunger when you see, this isn't anything new. This has been happening for years and decades, where people are leaving the church. And what we're seeing in today's society in America is a result of that. I firmly believe it. And when we just focus on things that are going to satisfy us outside of God and what His Son has done for us, then we're never going to get fulfilled. And we keep taking that left-hand turn of trying to find fulfillment in every other place with everything that is at our disposal. But we're ignoring what our body is yearning for, which is love and joy and peace. And you look at these kids that have been rescued in India, and they possess nothing, but they have everything. And so when you actually get the blessing of getting to go and experience that, to experience worship, and you hear these kids pray, and you don't know what they're saying. They're not speaking English, but you know what they're saying. And they're fully expecting God to perform miracles on a daily basis. In America, we don't need miracles.
That's right.
We have miracles like this.
Yeah.
And what we carry around in our hand, it can give us any answer to anything. I don't have to memorize numbers anymore.
Yeah.
And it's very perplexing to me, and there's only one way, there's only one answer, and that word is repent, and that's an ugly word in today's society. Now,
Dave, me and you have, not just you, man, many friends that I talk to, and I don't mean to bring this to a degree to where we are pointing fingers and things of that nature, but there is a lot to what you said. The Western church has been so insulated to where it is quickly becoming a Christ-less church, to where we come to be empowered, we come to be made to feel good about whatever issues or problems that we may be having, but we are isolated within our own communities. And when you look at the difference between the first century church, the book of Acts, and the modern church of where we are right now, you'll see stark differences between those two. And because, and this is solely because in 2010, when I took my first mission trip to Kenya, Africa, and I'm not trying to overhype this, so as God is my witness, if I'm lying, I'm dying. I'm not trying to overhype this, but in my first mission trip in 2010 to Kenya, Africa, literally the world opened up to me. Because I went into a church. We got there at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was an open roof church. It had dirt floors. It had little broken down milk cartons for seats. The kids led worship. We got there at 9 o'clock. We literally didn't leave until 6. It was the heat was exasperating. I was sweating out of every clothing that I had. But I didn't know that 9 hours had passed. 9 hours had passed in a praise and worship church setting, in an open roof with dirt floors, hot milk crates for the seats, they banging on buckets for drums. But the intensity of their worship, and then, and I've shared this with you even on our last one, the first couple days and weeks back after any mission trip, no matter where I go, are typically the hardest, because we go to places that are not on the postcards. So we're not going to vacation spots. We're going to where the least of these are, because that's where Jesus told us to go. But then when we go into these places and we cooperate with these pastors, and these pastors show us these communities, and they take us to their services, and we see people that literally have nothing. but the joy of the Lord that they have on the inside is absolutely amazing. So when you try to bridge those two and you come out on the other side, it's not that you're being insensitive to people when they are bringing up their problems. It's not that you're being insensitive to them, because it's a problem to them. But I think one of the things that I try to do is to try to get them to go higher. Okay, that may be an issue for you. You can't get on Wi-Fi right now. That's a big deal for you. That's a really big deal for you, and it's causing your emails and your internet to load slowly, and it's a big deal for you. But let me tell you about something else that'll hopefully give you more perspective on that. So as you were going through trying to increase awareness about what's going on in India, how would you bring them? I mean, are you telling them that, are you offering them to come over and see these problems front and center? Or how do you try to engage them to get them really involved in this process?
Yeah. So you've been to India with me, and you know that it's not what I'd call an evangelism trip.
It's not. It's not.
So we're not going to Taj Mahal.
No,
seeing Dubai on the way there.
We had to have a couple of bodyguards with us.
Yeah.
Moving stealthily. Then we have a lead card that was telling us where to go and all that other good stuff. So it's not your typical mission trip.
Yeah.
But explain further.
Mission trips aren't for everybody, but they are. You may not just be ready yet. India was the last place in the world I wanted to go.
Now, how many times have you been to India?
I think 28 before COVID, yeah.
Wow.
And then I haven't obviously been back since. But I long to be there. And but it literally was the bottom of my list. And I'd been on mission trips before, and I'd seen poverty, extreme poverty. But it just, when I went to India, it wrecked me, and knew I had to do something about it. And so that's how we got started in 2012. And, you know, the best advice my dad gave me was, because I didn't know anything about fundraising, and now millions of dollars later that have been raised, you know, his advice is still true today. And it's just, you know, just tell the story, let the Holy Spirit work. It takes all the pressure off. And so that's what we do, is tell the story. So this is not a nonprofit corporation that raises money for rescued children in India. This is a ministry as well. And so when we started, you know, we decided we want to be different. We want this is God's ministry. And we want to do everything we can to stand out. So what we decided when we started this was that we wanted to tell people that 100% of their funds, of their gifts, were going to go to help these rescued children.
100%?
Yeah.
Wow. So
it's even to the extent that when they donate by credit card online, we'll go back and reimburse their credit card fee.
Wow.
So 100% of that money goes to India.
Wow.
Why do we do that? Well, there's a study, I think it was by NYU, and the study said that over 40% of Americans don't trust charities, which means they don't give. 70% of Americans think that charities mismanage money.
Wow.
So our goal is to go after that 40-something% that have never given before. We'll certainly take anybody's money, but our goal is not about getting somebody's money. Our goal is about getting somebody involved, and the transaction is, what can God do in that person's life by them getting involved and helping these rescued kids?
So once a person connects to once they connect to your organization and they click submit and that money goes, what's the process of that $500 donation? What is it go and what does it do?
A lot of it is in child sponsorship. So you can sponsor a child that we care for $1.10 a day. Wow. And that provides their food, their medical costs, and their education.
Now, Dave, many people have saw that on a late night TV show. You know, they got the African kid with the flies flying around his head, and
the tear going down.
And the tear coming down his eye, and said that you can sponsor this child for, you know, a cup of coffee a day. Now, I've been there. I need you to hone in that for $1 and something a day, you can sponsor a child and will give him food education, and lodging.
Yep. So we have a children's home that we constructed there, and it's actually approved by the government in India to house up to 2,000 students or 2,000 orphans, whatever you want to call them. So we have plenty of kids that are available for sponsorship, and we partner someone with a child, and they know that their funds are caring for that specific kid. And when that kid grows up, that kid is going to have the opportunity to get vocationally trained in a trade. And that trade would be what we would consider a middle-class, blue-collar job, just like we have here. It might be an electrician, might be a welder, a carpenter, it might be a seamstress, all of those different opportunities. Those kids are looking at an opportunity to become a part of society in India. And that's truly the only way that that country is going to change, is not from the top to the bottom. It's from the bottom to the top, from the inside out. Because these kids are becoming parts of workforces all over India, and they're witnesses for Christ in the workplace. And so we hear stories of these kids leading Bible studies and having prayer time with the people that they work with. It's just incredible.
My problem, David, is even though when I try to communicate it to the best of my ability, the tremendous work that is being done in India by yourself, by Pastor, and risking so much on behalf of these kids, pardon me. But Mark chapter 9, verse 42 says, it would be better for you to tie a millstone around your neck and to be cast into the depths of the sea than to harm one of these little ones. I am absolutely, children are my passion. Yeah. I make a joke, and my wife says, I'm the baby whisperer, but I believe that children have a sense, and so I always pay attention to how a child acts around an adult. If a child doesn't act around an adult, that's giving me signs and clues that there's something in that person that's not right. Children are God's voice, and oftentimes they go voiceless. And what we're doing to our kids, not just in India, in America, but around the world, and how kids are suffering. And David, I mean, they are suffering. I'm talking about, little kids that haven't had an opportunity to experience the joys of life. Are literally going through hell on earth. There's no reason that the evil in somebody's heart of how anybody could abuse a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old and literally rob them of the joy of being a child is just unspeakable. So when you guys are going in and Pastor's doing what he's doing, and I need to do a side shot, and hopefully you'll catch it from the lunch that we had. Can we talk about that in broader terms with Pastor in that situation?
Sure.
Okay. So there's a pastor, man, and he is the real deal. He's currently in prison right now.
He is in jail, yes.
For preaching the gospel.
For preaching the gospel primarily, yes.
So, so there's a man that is in jail for preaching the gospel.
Yes.
Not because he stole something, not because he murdered somebody. He's in jail because he's preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Wow. So I know we have to be very, very careful about articulating that, because we don't know who's on the other side of that smartphone or that computer. But can we walk down that path as lightly as you deem fit?
You've heard of other pastors being arrested in dark countries, and there's a lot of social justice platforms. What's remarkable is this pastor, he has an opportunity to get bailed out, but he would rather be in jail right now because it gives him an opportunity to pray with people. And, this guy, he's the Indiana Jones of faith. If you remember, the Indiana Jones movie when he's going after the Holy Grail, and there's that invisible stone bridge, and he has to take that leap of faith. And that's what he does every day. He prays about something and he walks like God's already answered that prayer. And that's the kind of incredible faith this guy has. And he leads a network of pastors that are all over India. And these pastors are the ones that are doing the work. They're rescuing these kids. They're reaching the unreached. And all we do is raise the awareness and support.
David, you saying that this pastor is in jail for preaching the gospel, has the opportunity to be bailed out, but doesn't want to be bailed out because he can pray for the people. Let me let you follow up with that, but let me tell you about Pastor David Donker, who is out of Ghana. And he said something to me in 2016 at an event that we had here in Houston. He was coming down to showcase some of the things that he's doing in his country. And he told me, he said, Pastor, when we brought him around, he said, it's amazing to see what America can do without God. When he's going into and seeing the big buildings and the mega churches and things of that nature. And he says, in our country, because he's in the remote villages of Ghana, so he's not in the metroplex or anything like that. He says, we pray, God, give us our daily bread, literally. Mm-hmm. He said, that is a literal prayer. He say, I know that you guys pray when you get food, but we pray that God would give us food every single day. You have this pastor that is literally living a Paul experience. He could get out of jail, but chooses to keep that money and use it to go and get other kids, and uses this opportunity of being in prison as a ministry opportunity.
Everything is a ministry opportunity. When you look at countries and you hear stories of revival and how the church is growing in places like China that are closed, and you hear numbers about the number of Christians in China that are going to outpace the number of Christians in America. And you look at the persecution that these people face, like our partner pastor, and it's because there's a cost to your faith, and it's free here. A lot of people go to church here because they want to be entertained. I want to hear a good message that makes me feel good, that motivates me. I want to hear some good music.
Yeah.
And have that air conditioning blowing on my neck. And that's part of that wake-up call that we need here as a society.
So how do we get there, Dave? Because China in 2018, if you've never subscribed to this particular newsletter called Voice of the Martyrs, which is something that I follow very, very diligently, China in 2018 sent 362 missionaries to America.
Yeah.
China, communist China.
Yeah.
Communist China that does not have a freedom of religion. They have to do underground churches.
Yeah.
Sent over 300 missionaries to America to evangelize America.
Yeah. In places like China and India, over 90% of the pastors do not have a church. It's a house church. It's not brick and mortar. And if you ask 99% of Americans, they're going to say 99% of pastors have a church.
Even if it's a storefront with two people in it, they got a church.
There you go.
Man, so how do we... I hate to keep circling back around to this, but, we have to be able to try to give some practicality about how do we, connect A to B. People are looking and they're listening and they're saying, wow, I didn't know about that, man. That's wow, I didn't know about that. So the moment will grasp them. But within 15 minutes of them watching this podcast, things in life are going to happen. And soon this aha moment will be on the back burner. So how do you connect them to Child Freedom Coalition?
I just want to encourage people to get involved, to make a difference. When you hear about these problems of how our society's doing and all of our social injustice, all of our unrest, you can only do what you can do and what God can do through you, most importantly. So I just want to encourage people, whether you get involved with your church, don't go to be entertained, go and make a difference. If you want to get involved in something in your local community, do that, do something, get involved. That's what God wants us to do, make a difference. So for us, that's what we're trying to do. And why is it India? Because that's the least of these to us, are these kids. So if you want to learn more about what we're doing, it's childfreedom.org, Child Freedom, one word, and we're on social media. We don't post our videos publicly because we want to protect the privacy of, who we're working with. But it's a challenge of trying to raise awareness while not, raising too much awareness.
Yeah. That's a balance that you got to play.
Yeah, because the stories that we have, we could literally go to the media and it should be on the 6 o'clock news. But if it was, then that would be the end of these pastors that are literally putting their life on the line every day.
So let's talk just for a second, Dave, on what you just said. There is everybody knows the passage in John chapter 11 when Jesus hears that Lazarus had died. And his response to that was, good. We're going to stay here a couple more days. And communication between him and his disciples, Jesus says, okay, let's go. When he gets to where Lazarus was, Mary comes out, falls at his feet, start crying. Master, if you had only been here, my brother would have not died. Martha comes right after that. And Jesus sees the pain in their heart because their brother had passed. And then the Bible says very, very shortly but succinctly that Jesus wept. There's been a lot of sermons about that. You can find them 1,000,000 to 1 on YouTube. But as I look at that passage, I relate that to, and this is my experience, so this is where I'm contextualizing at. I look at that in regards to America right now. That Jesus is weeping because the things that we're focusing on so much, putting all of our time, energy, and effort in, are temporal. It doesn't move the needle in eternity. We are fighting on party lines, fighting racially, fighting this, fighting that, but all of those fights are temporary. They don't move the kingdom. They don't better people so that those better people can go out and better other people, like what's happening when these kids get jobs and then they sew back into an organization that help them to get out. And so they can better people help to better other people. And I believe that, and I truly believe this day, so we're sitting in churches and we're becoming reservoirs of the word. We are getting so much word. We're getting, even through the pandemic when you couldn't gather into churches, you still got online and got a sermon over here, sermon over there, sermon over here, sermon over there. So you got all of this sermon material built up over years. But God doesn't desire for us to be a reservoir. He desires for us to be a river. So God wants to flow through us. He don't want to build us up so that we these spiritual pie in the sky guys. So when you're talking to somebody about getting engaged, that's a challenge. It may seem easy to say, but having somebody get off of the back pew and say, man, going up and say, I want to participate in this ministry, I want to get involved with this organization, that's a scary moment. because it's easier and it's much more comfortable for me to drop a couple of buckets or a couple of dimes in the bucket and say, Pastor, you go handle that.
Yeah.
That's what we're paying you for, David.
Yeah.
You go to India. That's what we're paying you for. You come back, give me a video, make me feel good about myself. But engaging me in the process is a very difficult thing to do. And so I believe that right now, and I am praying for a revival day. I'm praying that God would strike the hearts of us in America and bring us to a place of repentance so that we will fall down at his knees and he would usher in the Shekinah glory of God, so that men and women can realize that the differences that we have apart, those things are minute in compared to what we have in common. Yep. Brother, me and you have talked about this at great lengths. You are a white man if the people at home who are on Spotify, who are on Apple, you are a 100% white man. I am a bona fide white man. I am a bona fide black man.
Yes.
We crushed the stereotype of saying that white and black can't get along. I have a genuine love and respect for you, as I know that you have for me.
Yes.
And all the things that we are fighting right now in this land are temporary. So when you hear stuff about what's going on like that and the problems and the progress that you're making, about how you're bettering these kids' lives, and these kids are looking back and saying, go get my brother, go get my sister, because I want their lives to be better as well. Engaging people in this particular forum is sometimes challenging, David. It's very challenging. Not that it's not without an end result. I believe that God can work through it. But I want people to look at Child Freedom Coalition and say, man, how can I get involved in this?
Yeah.
What's the grassroots level? So that is a sponsorship. What is the grassroots level of connecting with David and Child Freedom Coalition?
Yeah. That's really how our growth is, like any other business, any other church. If I'm an insurance agent or a real estate broker, it's word of mouth referral. And you and I know that the most powerful thing that we can do isn't with what's in our pocketbook. It's in prayer. And so we have prayer warriors that are praying up these kids every day. And these kids are praying for the people here that are involved every day. And again, these kids are relying on miracles to meet their needs. And like I said earlier, they possess nothing, but they have everything. They're not in want. And for us to be able to live like that, getting away from all of our distractions and all of our first world problems sounds really refreshing to me. I pray for a revival as well, brother.
You remember when we were in a hotel and the kids were gathered upstairs into this particular building. I had to go up some stairs to get up there to the top level, and I don't know, it was 200 or so kids up there, maybe a little bit more. It was a lot of them.
Yeah, that was an apartment building we were leasing when we were still building our children's home. And
these kids,
700 kids at that time.
700 kids.
Yeah.
David, these kids had the audacity in unison to stretch out their hands and start praying for Pastor Holman, an American pastor. These kids that were rescued from rock quarries, from despicable conditions, treated in ways that my mind has a hard time wrapping itself around. You know, these kids stretched out their hand and prayed for me, an American pastor, who in a few days was going to get on a plane and come back to the United States. And here they are praying fervently for me, thanking me for coming to see them. I can't really quantify, put it into words, that feeling that I reflect on often.
I want to tell you two things. These kids are taught to take prayer very seriously. So when you pray, you get on your knees. And when you raise your hands asking your Father for help, you don't raise your hands with your palms out forward. because if you do that, you can lift yourself up. When you pray, you put your palms inward and you ask your Father to lift you up. So that's how that's how seriously they take prayer. It's incredible. The second thing I want to tell you is that we're so blessed to live. Just living in America, you're in the top 3 percentile, regardless of what your income is. You've won the lottery just by being born and living here. And it was one of my earlier trips, and on the way to the airport, the city was probably about 5 or 7 million people. It was a large city, and in the middle of the city is this garbage dump that was about 5 or 6 acres. And our pastor friend said there are about 1,500 families that live in this little garbage dump, and little blue tarp huts, 8x8 cardboard, plywood. You've seen that kind of stuff before. And this was an untouchable village living in the middle of the city, and these parents would purposefully maim their own children so that they would make more money when they begged on the streets. And I had my backpack with me. My suitcase was in the van. And I had some candy. I was handing out some candy to the kids, and they were laughing and smiling. And I'd forgot to put on my tennis shoes. I was wearing my flip-flops. And normally when I get to the airport, I'll put on my tennis shoes, and I had left them in my suitcase. So when I got to the airport, I still had my flip-flops on from walking through that dump, and my feet were just caked in dust and dirt and grime. And I checked in, and my airline had bumped me from domestic class to business class. And so I sat down, and they brought me a glass of champagne and some nuts, the stewardess or the flight attendant did. And, I looked at my surroundings, and I said, where I am right now represents the top, 0.001 percentile of what people on this planet get to experience as far as, what is represented by wealth. And I'm looking at my dirty feet and just thinking about where I just came from. And that was at the bottom 0.001% of, poverty and despair. And what a contrast that was. That's stayed with me, through today. And, I think about that despair. We live in a country now that has everything, but we're full of despair. We're looking for fulfillment, and we're looking for answers in places that are not going to give us the answer. It's not going to give us fulfillment. So that's why I'm right with you, brother. We need that revival.
My friend, let me tell you. Yeah. Sometimes, when you start thinking about, these Christian principles that we expound on a Sunday by Sunday basis, that, one of the most starkest scriptures in all of the Bible is in Judges 17, when Samson was with Delilah, and she had given out his secret about his hair, and the Philistines come in, and Delilah says to Samson, "Wake up." And then Samson says, "I will shake myself as I normally did." But then it says that Samson did not know that the Spirit of the Lord had departed. He had gotten so comfortable with God. He had gotten so comfortable with the anointing, so comfortable with God that he didn't even know that God had left him. It's a stark reminder that, as we come in Sunday after Sunday, 3 praise songs, preach, offering, benediction, out the door, bluebies, saltgrass, home, nap, wake up for Monday. We get so comfortable in the routine of religion that we forget about God. And it's in these moments to where Dave my heart aches, because I think the view that I share, only a few God has given that unique privilege to, because they've seen other things and they're able to incorporate into their overall messages the experience from other places, which gives you such a profound perspective that otherwise you just can't enjoy. So all the stuff that's going on in America, we don't sweep it under the rug as if it's not important. But if you are a born again believer, God has told us in Matthew 25, what you've done to the least of them, you've done unto me. He said, when you go and visit somebody in prison, you go and visit me. When you go and visit somebody in the hospital, you go and visit me. When you give them a cup of water, when you give them a plate of food, you're doing that unto me. And so I really want to, for these last couple of minutes there, I want you to, as best, and you're a preacher at heart. You come from some good stock. Pastor Fenton Moorhead, who is a great friend of the ministry. You come from some good stock. So I just want to give you a couple of minutes to, from the bottom of your heart, however the Lord leads up on you, is to talk to that person right now. And there are many people like this, Dave. They feel like they have a tugging that I can do more, but I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I want to do more. I know there's something more that I can be doing, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
So help that person right now.
There's two simple words: go and do. So where to go and what to do, there's only one person that's going to give you that answer, and that's God. So that's something that you need to pray about. And it doesn't have to be across the planet, in a dark corner of the world. It can be down the street. It can be next door. So I just want to encourage people to go and do and make a difference. And that can be supporting. It could be praying for your pastor. It can be your next door neighbor making a difference, and being a light, and just being obedient to the Holy Spirit. There's a pastor friend of mine that I love this saying. It's so simple. Every day, it's whatever you say, I will obey, and that's his prayer. And just if you ask God to reveal that, He's going to reveal it to you.
That's scary too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my prayer for everybody that's listening to this or watching this is that God instills in their heart that desire, that yearning to be fulfilled, and just become transformed and renewed, and discovers what their go and what their do is.
Now, I know that you've been in the same struggle that I have over the last year or so. The last mission trip that I took was February of 2020 into Belize. That's right before everything just kind of hit the fan. So I haven't been on a plane now for about a year, and I'm getting those angst right now.
Yeah.
Talking to our international partners, trying to connect to them as much as I possibly can, but not being able to travel and visit our friends in these other countries has been a real thorn in my side. How you been adjusting to that?
It's definitely a brave new world. It was an adjustment from doing so much traveling, going to India 3 times a year and then traveling domestically, raising awareness, to shutting down was quite a shock. There's something that I've always prescribed to, and it's Andy Stanley that talks about this, and he describes it as whatever you do, be uniquely better. And so if that's your business, if that's your faith, and what he was doing at his church, he didn't reinvent the church. He was just trying to do something a little bit different that was better than other people were doing. And the odds of Marcus Holman coming up with the next big thing of whatever the next thing is slim and none. And the same for me. So what you want to do is be a student, not a critic. And so let me give you an example. 25 years ago when I was dating my wife, there were Blockbusters on every corner. And there was this little company called Netflix that had just come out, and you could order a DVD and they'd mail it to you.
Yeah.
You'd watch the movie and then send it
back.
back.
Yeah.
And so what Blockbuster and Netflix both feared was technology, streaming technology. They knew that that was around the corner. And Netflix was a student of technology, of the next big thing. Blockbuster was a critic. Mm-hmm. And so you fast forward to today.
Yeah, come on now.
You know, on everyone's TV
Yeah.
is Netflix.
Yeah.
And there's now, I think, one Blockbuster that is in existence, and that's it. So that's our approach. We want the ability to adapt. Our mission stays the same. But we want the ability to be able to turn on a dime if something like a pandemic creeps up and tries to hamper our ability to raise awareness and raise funds. So the blessing of, you know, being in a pandemic in 2021 or 2020 is, you know, technology.
Yeah.
So a lot of our connectivity is virtual and Zoom and FaceTime and, you know, in the ways that we try to connect with our partners. And so that is a blessing, but we're constantly being students of what's out there on the forefront. What can we take advantage of that makes our connectivity, you know, more prevalent than anyone else's?
So now I know you did it before, but I want to give you some time to look into this camera because I'm going to put your information. It'll be up on the screen as you are talking about it. So let's give the website, let's give phone numbers, let's give emails. How does a person right now that is watching, how do they connect with Child Freedom Coalition?
Yeah, thank you. So our website is childfreedom.org. We're available on all the socials, you know, Facebook, Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. I'd love to talk to anybody about it. My cell phone I give out is 214-493-0286. If you're going to hate on me, don't call. If it's a number I don't know, usually I'm not going to pick it up. So leave me a voicemail and I will call you back. But I'll answer any question that you have. Our website has a Shop for Good page, and our goal is to have that mimic something like Amazon.com, which is how we do a lot of our transactions these days. So instead of buying something for someone that doesn't need anything, then we've created a Shop for Good where something that you buy can really make a difference in the life of a rescued kid in India. So again, that's childfreedom.org, and there's several ways to navigate around that page. My email address is david@childfreedom.org.
I want to encourage you guys to get on this website and learn about this. Now, let me ask you, I know with the pandemic notwithstanding, are there any opportunities for vision trips? Do you guys do anything like that? What does that look like?
We hope to be able to crank those back up after,
okay.
COVID gets figured out.
Okay.
We know it's not going away, but once it gets figured out. But our vision casting trips are, as you can attest to, are pretty eye-opening.
Absolutely, absolutely. Everybody that's watching us right now, from whatever platform that you're watching, we've talked about a whole lot of stuff, but I want to leave you with a couple of things. One, no matter where you are, no matter what walk of life you may be in right now, wherever you are, you can make a difference in that place. Decide to engage. The reason why our world is going in the direction that it is going in is because people are on the sidelines of life, being a critic. Wherever you are, you can engage. At whatever level, just engage. Everybody's not going to be able to stand behind a lectern, and everybody's not going to be able to get behind a microphone. But you can go and love on your neighbor. You can love your family. You can love your friends. You can do some very tangible things where you are right now to stem this evil tide that is bombarding the world. God has a great plan for us. God's plan is better than what we could ever have for ourselves. And so I want to encourage you that I know the problems may seem vast. I know they may seem insurmountable. I know they may seem like it's just too much and what can I do? But I want to encourage you that wherever God is tugging on your heart at, wherever that may be, I need you to start there. I need you to start there. And the first way that you start is with a yes. So wherever God is tugging you at, it may be small and insignificant to others. Just say yes right there. Just say yes right there. Yes for me started in 2010 when I was approached to go to Africa. Didn't know how I was going to pay for it because we were not in a financial position to afford $7,000. But I said yes. And with that one yes, God has opened up a whole new world. So I want to encourage you that you've heard about the stories, you know that it's going on. This is not just synonymous to India. This is a worldwide problem. But start where you're at. And the saying that we like to say is bloom where you're planted. Wherever you're at, start right there. David, let me tell you, brother, I love you, brother.
Love you, man.
This work resonates so strongly because I've seen it, man. The commitment to the gospel and the purity of the gospel is what I saw. Not the bells and whistles, not the fluff, but the purity of Christ and Christ alone. I saw that message. I witnessed it. The pastor, I witnessed this. Everybody, I've witnessed the Christ alone message. This is the real deal, folks. This is the real deal. This is not fluff. This is not to make you feel good. They are doing the work of the ministry. And so, man, I want to commend you. Your father, God bless his soul, was instrumental in what we do here at Bethel's Family, and what he did and how he mentored our pastor, Walter August Jr. So your family holds great, great presence in our ministry. And, man, I just want to thank you for all that you do. God is going to bless you abundantly.
It's been an honor to be here with you, brother. And this church really means a lot to me. It meant a lot to my dad, my family. And we just appreciate your friendship and with Pastor August as well. So thank you for having me.
And so you have a platform anytime that you want to come on. If you got something else to highlight and we got some other stuff that we want to talk about, please know that you got a platform here. So just let me know. And you know we got our spot. We need to go ahead and put that on the calendar on a frequent basis. Because I definitely, man, I appreciate what you're doing.
I've been working on some R&B tunes. So,
I think we need to stay away from that. I think we need to stay away from that. I think we need to, I do want to lift up and just tell the people, without getting very specific, to continue to pray for the pastor in India. Continue for his well-being, for his strength, and for his boldness. Pray for the kids in India. As you get on childfreedom.org, these pictures are just going to blow your mind. These smiles, which is, you know, the smiles, considering what they came out of, is you know, that's so. Without further ado, man, thank you so very much. Give my regards to Marcy, to your entire family, to your mom. Let them know that we love them. That's not a pie in the sky stuff. We love you guys and love what you guys are doing. Now, you're in Houston now, right? Or you're in Fulshear?
In Fulshear.
You're in Fulshear. So you're back in the community now.
Yeah. It's great to be back in Texas.
Great to be back.
Oh, yeah.
Great to be back. Man, so thank you so very much. I want to give you some last words or anything that you want to leave on the people's heart.
Thank you, MDH. It's great to see you, brother. So
that's my moniker.
Thank you guys for tuning in and watching and putting up with this old white guy. Hey, it's an honor to be here, brother.
Man, God bless you. Everybody that thank you for tuning in to Studio B. Remember, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, IG, Spotify, wherever you access your podcast, that's where you can find us. And make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe so that you don't miss one single episode of Studio B. Thank you very much for joining us, y'all. We'll see you next week.